Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Blue Truth and Bourbon. I am your host, Steve, and it's good to be back. Um, Last week we were on Wednesday, so I did it a day early and I think an hour early. I think I did it like at 6. So back at our regular time, regular day, just back on the radio. So hope everybody is having a good week so far. I know the weekend's coming up. This weekend be a fun weekend for me. I playing golf on Saturday in a charity golf tournament, Hometown Heroes Alliance. Good friend of mine is the guy who runs it, and just actually retired, hopefully for the final time. Jeff Brown, 41 years in law enforcement. So congratulations, Jeff. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday, and probably do a pop up interview with you when we're out there at the golf tournament. So I'll have my microphones with me and do some talking. So yeah, um, been a busy week. I've been out of the house a little bit. I don't know if you guys saw the public service announcement I posted yesterday. Just was out and about and was thinking about it. Some of the videos that I've seen this week. So doing research for the show. Um, Hopefully everybody got a chance to look at last week's podcast about my story, my battle with PTSD. So I just figured, the folks who know me, if you're struggling with something, sometimes it's easier with somebody you know personally that has gone through it. Gives you an opportunity to, self-examine and hopefully get some help if you need it. So I appreciate everybody who watches and participates in the show. Um, I had a conversation today. I'm not looking to monetize this thing, so there's nothing right now that I just do it for fun. I do it for me, and hopefully somebody gets something out of it. So, um, yeah, so that's where we're at. So, yeah, I don't know if you guys saw it. I just saw it yesterday, and I've seen a bunch of stuff today on it. But there was a Walton County deputy in Florida who was shot and killed in the line of duty yesterday. And when I saw the story, kind of made me think about my past and things that I've done, on the job. And so let me preface this by saying that I am not in any way, you can see the name of the show, Complacency and Law Enforcement. Before you cancel me or log off or string me up, let me just say that I am in no way, shape, or form saying that this deputy who was shot and killed was being complacent. That's not what I'm saying at all. I wasn't there. I don't know what went on other than the facts that they put out on the news. Um, I'm not saying he was complacent. What I I I want you to get out of this is, as I was reading the news story and thinking on my own career, um, because I mean he was shot and killed responding to a trespasser at a Dollar General, and I thought, how many times did I respond to a trespasser anywhere, you name it, where you know I I went there not thinking that anything bad could happen. And I'm not saying what this is what the deputy did. Again, I'm not saying he was complacent. I was thinking about my own career and thinking about you guys wanting to keep you safe. The whole idea is not that I think this deputy did anything wrong. What I think is that we all get to a point where some things become routine that we just don't think about things. And so I wanted to come to you today and kind of just reinvigorate you in regards to how you approach the job and your mindset. So I'm not saying that this deputy was wrong in any way, shape, or form. I don't believe that. He gave the ultimate sacrifice, dying in the line of duty, and stepped in where most people aren't willing to step in. So he's my hero, and I will mourn his passing. But like I said, and like it says here on the bottom of the screen, I wanted to talk about complacency in law enforcement, and complacency in law enforcement is one of the biggest threats I think that deputies, officers, troopers, uh, and even feds um, can face. It can manifest itself in different ways, and um, we take things for granted because every day we go out, not something bad doesn't happen every time you go out. Something dangerous doesn't happen every time you go out. And so I think we really get into a routine, and that causes us to um, become less careful, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe it's okay if you have a different opinion than me. And if you're, watching now, feel free to comment. Let me know you're here. Also, if you watch this later on our YouTube channel or on Spotify or even on the Facebook pages, um, you know, put your comments, suggestions, complaints. Like I said, I told you last week, I don't know if everybody saw this, but Facebook has changed their rules. So they're no longer archiving, even though I pay for this stream yard. Facebook is no longer keeping streaming videos longer than 30 days, so that will disappear. So if you need to watch past episodes or recommend past episodes, they'll have to do that on Spotify or Apple or on the YouTube channel. So, but yeah, I want to talk about a couple of things, and we'll probably be rather short tonight, 30 minutes or so. But um, why does complacency happen, do you think, in law enforcement? And one of the things, and one of the reasons, or one of the things that I think happens. Hey, what's up, Jamie? Thanks for being here. One of the things that I think happens and why complacency happens is routine fatigue. And I don't mean the emphasis, really mean on the first word, routine, not on the fatigue. By routine fatigue, I mean we become fatigued by the routine. um, officers, deputies, troopers, what have you, respond to the same kind of call almost every day. Especially, I mean, you think about where you work. If you work in an area where, like I did for a long time, a lot of businesses, a lot of convenience stores, a lot of shops and stuff like that, where trespassers happen, almost daily at the same place, and you're responding to these places, and it becomes routine. You show up, you get out, you talk to the business person, you talk to the trespasser, you fill out the trespass form, they go on their way, you go on your way. And so it becomes routine. And because nothing happens early on or every day, you don't get into a fight every day, bad things don't happen. Um, it just becomes routine. And because of that, we allow ourselves to kind of take our guard down a little bit because, well, I was here yesterday for somebody else. So, you know, what's going to happen? And honestly, as you all know, we deal with a lot of times the same people every day. But, when there's somebody new, you don't know them. You don't know what they're capable of. You don't know what they've done in their past, especially, I mean, think about routine traffic stops. Um, you know, there's a reason that, we call people out of the car to get them away from all that kind of weapon or any kind of weapon and stuff. But again, traffic stops become routine, and you do so many of them that nothing happens on that your guard's down a little bit, and you step out of the car and you don't know what you're going to get. So uh, one of the reasons, yeah, I think is fatigue or routine fatigue. We just become so fatigued with you know over and over and over and over again. So another thing, another reason why I think it happens is overconfidence. Um, there's guys out there that, and I'm not saying there's not skilled people out there, but there are guys out there that are more confident than their skills allow for. And that can become a reason why complacency happens because they believe, well, I don't, I have a skill set. They don't train, they don't do anything else, but they believe that what they have is enough to get them through. And so they're very confident in their abilities. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that can be a good thing because, you want to present some sort of confident or strong or strength in your image, because you don't want to be perceived as weak, and you don't want the bad guy to think you're weak, because that can lead to injuries and cause some bad things to happen. So, being overconfident, has the ability to make us complacent. Um, they say that, I'm sure all of you have heard this, if not most of you have heard this, but um, they say that the body can't go where the mind hasn't been. And so I think it's important that, and I used to do this with, especially with the trainees that we had that were working with my squad. Um, we're doing a lot of scenario based training, taking them aside, taking the FTOs and the recruits, the trainees off the road for an hour or two and doing some scenario based training so that, especially like traffic stops and suspicious people, and, suspicious people, coincide with trespassers. So, um, you know, doing those kind of things to prepare the mind. And obviously, you can't, other than doing force on force training, you can't perfectly prepare for what somebody else is going to say or do. A good idea is to prepare them mentally for what's going on and to prepare yourself mentally for what's going on or what could happen. If you're responding to a call and you're not thinking in your head, okay, if I get out and this happens or somebody does this, this is what I'm going to do, is how I'm going to react. This is, where I'm going to put myself, stuff like that. If you're not doing that already, man, and that's why I spend a lot of time as a supervisor. I told my people, you're responding to an emergency call, code 3 call. I want you driving and thinking about what's going to happen when you get there. I don't want you asking questions on the radio. That's my job. Let me ask the questions. I will ask the questions that need to be asked. And you drive and think about, okay, when I get out of this car, man, if this happens, here's where we have to be. This is the kind of thing that we have to do. So, um, yeah, routine fatigue. What do we say? Overconfidence, um, burnout, and stress is a big one. We have 12-hour shifts now, and um, a lot of things going on in 12 hours. And, between, especially when the 12-hour shifts, when you're working two on, two off, three on, two off, two on, or two on, three on, those three on weekends, you're working 35 hours, 36 hours in 3 days, almost a full work week in 3 days that most people, they get 5 days to work that many hours. So, yeah, stress and burnout, from the long shifts. What else? Think about the issues we have, especially these days. And I've read a bunch of articles here lately and seen a bunch of, personally seen a bunch of policies and even incidents of discipline where people do the right thing, but the agency doesn't like it. The perception is bad or whatever. And so you've got a lot of administration issues, people that in the administration that causing your problems. Um, you know, so those burdens can create some of this burnout and stress. A lack of motivation. Trust me, I get it. There's days where sometimes it's hard to get up and go to work, and you don't want to be there. And so, um, not being motivated to work, that can cause complacency. You get too comfortable and, you're sitting in that seat relaxing and sitting under a tree, and it's easy to let your guard down. It's easy to forget about the outside world. And when that bad call happens, that next thing, you're already, trying to come from behind. And so that's part of the burnout and stress, making you less alert, making you, not see things clearly. And like we talked about, over the course of these last couple of minutes here, a lack of recent threats. We haven't had anything bad happen in a long time, so we get comfortable in the routine, and or you haven't, you've never faced a critical incident, um, and you kind of underestimate the potential dangers of everything. That's what we're talking about. Where the mindset, like I said, where the body can't go where the mind hasn't been, and if you haven't gone over this stuff in your head and things happen, it's kind of difficult for you to catch up because your body's not prepared for that. Especially if you're not doing these scenario based training. I get that some of the smaller departments that's difficult to do, but it's important that we are training that way because, again, what do they say? You fight how you train. And so doing things or like, and specifically, I mean, you can think about instances where I know I can't remember where it was, but I know that they trooper, I think it was a trooper somewhere, got into a shooting and was shot and killed because of the way he had trained and the way the department trained them. And it was a wheel gun. You know, shot his rounds, emptied the rounds out, loaded the speed, and there were live rounds that they found with him because, he had kicked out live rounds, because of the way they train, shoot 2 rounds, reload, blah, 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 So, um, the way you're training is the way you fight. So when things like this happen, with this Walton County deputy, that's what, goes through my mind. Not that he did anything wrong. I don't believe he did anything wrong, but my goal in all of this is to encourage you guys to think about those kind of things so that the next time you're responding to a Dollar General, a 7-Eleven, the Walmart for a trespasser, that you are mentally preparing yourself for what could happen when you get there. Now, I'm not saying you got to be amped up, bouncing all over the place. You get there and you're up here and they're down here. That's not what we're talking about. But mentally preparing for, okay, if God forbid I'm in this loss prevention room and with this trespasser or this retail theft, and all of a sudden this person decides to do something stupid, what am I going to do? How am I going to react? Where are my exits? What are the things that we can do? So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. What are the dangers of complacency? I got my notes over here if that's what you guys are wondering why I'm looking over here. But dangers of complacency, increased risk of injury or death. Not recognizing a threat can lead to a dangerous encounter. I don't know. I saw earlier this week in South Florida, I believe it was. Officer gets out of his car and you can see him standing at the door, and all of a sudden a guy charges him with a knife, and he's got to retreat, and he's shooting at this guy. I think he ended up killing him. I know he shot him. Um, but this guy immediately after he steps out of his car, he's still inside this door, staring at the guy over the door, and this guy charges at him with a knife. So, not recognizing a threat or being unprepared for a threat, those are the dangers of complacency. When we get too comfortable in our jobs, when we get too comfortable doing the routine, that can cause you to slow down. And your mind has got to constantly be preparing for these kind of things. Um, Public and officer safety issues. A lack of vigilance on our part can result in avoidable accidents. Because we become complacent, maybe we do things differently than we normally would, and because of that, somebody gets hurt, somebody gets injured, whether it's us or whether we have to injure the public because um, we didn't either recognize a threat or we didn't handle that threat properly because of complacency, and we end up injuring somebody, get a lawsuit, and now the agency's paying out money. So constantly being aware of your surroundings, constantly be preparing for these kind of things. Um, what are the other dangers? Breakdown in tactics and training. failing to follow basic safety protocols, um, not wearing your vest, not doing proper searches, um, not being in the right place. What I mean by that is, positioning yourself in and around the car, in and around a house, in and around a business, not positioning yourself in the right place, um, because of complacency, because, well, nothing's happened in the recent past, so I'm not worried about this kind of thing. Those are the things that we need to focus on, is continuing to do the things that we're supposed to be doing, to protect ourselves, to protect others, and to be able to go home at the end of the night. Because that's the goal, is to go home with as many holes as you came in with, and to go home. Period. So I think it's important that, you know mental preparation, obviously training is a big thing, um, and then of course, some of the things that can happen. Complacency can lead to neglect of duty, poor community interactions, and failure to properly investigate incidents. Because, well, I've done this so many times and it's routine, and, I know how to do these things. And then you screw up. And then what happens? Like, for instance, I'm not saying that this is a complacency issue, but it's an issue where somebody screwed up, maybe because of routine so many times. But we had at least one where I worked, and one here recently, really local. I can't remember where it was. I have to look it up. But deputy forgot to get a statement signed by the victim, and it was a prosecution type thing where, person could be prosecuted for the crime. Deputy forgot to get the statement signed. Phoned the victim of the crime. Said, "Hey, uh, I forgot to get you to sign this statement. I'm gonna need to meet up with you and blah blah blah. Get you to sign it, whatever." And then for whatever reason, he contacted them back and said, "Don't worry about it. Never mind. I got it figured out." Well, what happened was he signed their name on the statement form. Well, for whatever reason, the detectives were reaching out to the victim. Victim says, "Yeah, he called me and said that I didn't sign the statement, but somehow he said he got it figured out. So I didn't have to sign the statement." And lo and behold, on the bottom of the statement, there's a signature, purportedly the victim's signature, which the deputy or the officer, I can't remember where it was. I know where it was, where I was, it was a deputy, but um, ended up, getting fired because of what they did. It's a crime. They forged the document. So again, not saying that's a complacency issue, but it could probably happen because the routine is such that you do this so many times that sometimes you forget things, and that is part of complacency. Is you forget to do things because everything becomes routine, and you're working. Especially if you're going to a call you don't want to go to, you don't want to take this report. You take the report, you forget things. So um, another way to combat complacency, mindset and training. Regular scenario based training, mental conditioning, and stress inoculation exercises. Um, so again, like we talked about, preparing your mind, scenario based training. Listening to the radio. I'm not advocating for this because I believe your time off is you should be your time off, but you're listening to the radio, you're sitting around the house, how would I handle this call? I got this call I'm listening to, especially for trainees, man, when they're, or even if they're in like what we would call week zero at the sheriff's office. Um, Turn the radio on, listen to the call, learn the codes and stuff like that. But, think about as you're listening to the call, an emergency call, what would I do when I got there? Mentally preparing yourself for that, because that's important. Another way to battling complacency is accountability and supervision. Strong leaders ensure that they're holding high standards for their folks. And like I said, that's one of the things that I tried to do was get my folks away individually, do training, do scenario based training with them on the road in block trainings. But one of the things that we also did when I was a corporal and the sergeant that I had that I worked with, we took our deputies and rotated them through different CID criminal investigations units for training. with sex crimes or domestic or robbery, so that they learned how to investigate those crimes, which made them better patrol deputies. So, supervisors are important here. If you're a supervisor watching this and you're not doing scenario based training with your folks, if you're not helping them to learn the job, to avoid complacency, especially today in today's workforce, Andy Fry and I talked about this on here, but there are more and more today, there are less cops, if you will. There are less guys that are going out there getting into things, searching for bad guys, looking for bad things. More and more today, as I saw as I was leaving, is we are developing a system of report takers. And they go from report call to report call to report call. And they're not out there doing the dangerous stuff or the stuff that could turn dangerous. Again, it could create complacency in the workplace for you, could cause issues for you later on down the road, because you're not used to putting yourself in those spots, in those scenarios where, so when you look at it, supervisors that are not ensuring that their folks are doing these kind of things, it'd be very difficult for somebody not to become complacent. Um, Again, and part of that, peer check-ins. Officers should remind each other to stay alert and correct complacency when observed. So if you notice something out there, guys that you're still on the job, when you're on a call with somebody and you notice that, hey, this guy's a little off today. He's not, exactly using good officer safety, or you just notice something that seems a little off. You know, pull that guy aside later on and say, "Hey, what's going on? I noticed this. It seems like you're being a little less on guard than you normally are, and I think it's important that we discuss this and try to figure it out." So, vary your patrol routines. Don't do the same thing every day when you're just out randomly patrolling. Don't let things become a routine, because that's dangerous. That can cause you to end up uh, finding yourself less aware, less alert, and less likely to be sharp when it's time to be sharp. So, and then continuous learning. Obviously reviewing real life case studies, things like this. Like I said, with the Walton County deputy, I'm not saying he did anything wrong, but it'll be interesting to see if they may not release body cam video because of the both fatalities. But you know, when you do get an opportunity to look at some of these body cam videos that are out there, or even just honestly just reading, reports of cases that occurred, um, you want to look at those and apply them to your own life, apply them to your own shift, apply them to your own career. That's why, I said I brought this up about complacency, not because I think the deputy was complacent, but because it reminded me of times where was, you know, too comfortable. "Oh, I'm going to a trespasser." I'm not saying this guy was. I'm saying I was, and so it just wanted me to remind you guys, and I'm sure cases like this do the same thing to you. They remind you of certain things, and maybe give you a wake up call on occasion. So, um, obviously, we did a lot of, and a lot of our critical incidents, a lot of our big things. Um, you know, we did a lot of debriefing the incidents, and that's important, because we can talk about, well, what went right, what went wrong, what do we think we could have done better, and so those type of things help prevent us from getting complacent in our careers and our jobs, doing when we're out there on patrol specifically. And it kind of reinforces the necessity to stay vigilant. And so that's what I'm trying to do tonight, guys. I just want, for those of you who are the young guys, if you get the chance to watch this or you pass it along to somebody, I know I'm probably boring tonight, and that's okay. Again, I do this kind of stuff for me because I see stuff and it makes me mad or angers me or makes me sad, and I want to, you know, kind of vent a little bit, and but I want to get a message out there, as well sometimes. And so I think it's important that we encourage one another, and we are looking out for one another, and that's, it's kind of what I feel like I'm doing here. So, um, and honestly, especially you new guys, newly promoted people, um, you likely have more influence over complacency than other supervisors because of your recently, I was just there. I was just in your shoes. Um, I just, had the same thing happen to me. So, you new guys, you newly promoted guys, I suggest that you add something to your repertoire. You put something in your toolbox that you're going to use to help the people that work for you to prevent complacency. Because man, there is nothing worse. I told you last week, and this wasn't a complacency issue, but there's nothing worse than losing somebody that works for you, and it's very difficult to deal with. It's just like losing anybody else. Could I done something different? Blah blah blah. But honestly, adding something to your toolbox to help the folks that work for you. Grab people aside, man. Tell them, hey, show yourself busy on the computer. We're gonna go do some scenarios. We're gonna go clear some buildings. Some vacant buildings. We're gonna, because again, think about that. Going to an alarm call and clearing a building with you and two other cops. Um, how complacent can you get? I know I was. I know I did. Yeah. Nobody's ever been inside. We've had some where there are people inside, but nobody's ever inside. So it's very easy to just walk around ho hum and not be prepared for rounding that next corner. And so look into, guys, look into developing yourselves, not necessarily just at the job, but there's places out there. You're starting to see these places that are going up where you can go do real life scenario stuff. You know, I am in no way, shape, or form attached to Decision Tactical. I haven't been there, but I've seen lots of videos. I know people that have been there. I know people that work there. Um, and they're doing some great things. I've seen some agencies do a lot of training up there. So, Decision Tactical, that's one of the places where, if I'm thinking about taking my son up there and doing some stuff. So, find places like that where you don't necessarily have to go to the range but, find a place where you can do some mental and realistic training to prepare yourself mentally and physically for what's going to go on out there, guys. Because I don't want to see another person lose their life because bad guys took advantage of a situation. And again, don't string me up or cancel me because of this, because I'm not saying that Walton County deputy was wrong. um, I just want you to be safe, thinking about the next time you go to a Dollar General. It's not about right and wrong, it's about preparing yourself for anything that could happen. And he returned fire, and he was able to take the suspect down as well. Not that that's any doesn't make anything better, but being prepared, because in my opinion, honestly, he was prepared. So take care of yourselves, guys. I appreciate you being on here. I appreciate comments. We'll get out of here tonight. Next week, looking at a topic. Not ready to share it with you guys yet, but looking at something. So just be careful this weekend. Be careful the rest of the week till we see you next week. Probably see you this weekend. I'll do some pop ups from the golf tournament. So talk to Jeff Brown and a couple other guys on the golf course, and maybe post some video of my horrible golf playing so you guys can get a laugh at that. So take care. I appreciate you being here. And if anybody has anything, here you go. Don't hesitate to send me an email here at bluetruthbourbonpodcast@gmail.com. Otherwise, you can catch us up on Spotify, on YouTube, and on Apple. And thanks for being here. Thanks for being you. You guys are my heroes. And if you need anything, give me a shout.